Hey guys, today we're going to go over the answers to your test review to make sure that you're all ready for your test. We're starting with a few definitions. Remember, a ratio is just a comparison of two different quantities. Okay, and that's why we can simplify ratios and they'll still have the same relationship because we're comparing the two quantities. I'm going to skip down to rate next because a rate is just a special type of ratio. So it's a ratio that compares two quantities with different units. So the key difference between a ratio and a rate is that the rate has to do with two units. The ratio may not even have units. It could be, dogs to cats or, boys to girls. The rate, it has units, like $15 for 5 apples, something like that. Now I'm going to skip up to unit rate because that's a special type of rate. A rate that has been simplified so that it has a denominator of 1. And that's important because we're trying to find out how much 1 costs. We don't want to know how much 5 apples cost. We want to know how much it costs for each apple. Okay, so for number 4 here, it says use the numbers 5 and 7 to write a ratio in 3 different ways. So remember, we can write ratios like fractions, and if you want to show a fraction on your Google Doc, you can just do a dash like that. We can do it with a colon like that. And remember that because it doesn't give us an order for this ratio, we could have shown it in the other direction. We could have done 7, 5, or 7, 5. You can also do it by making pictures, but we don't really have any description of what we are comparing. They're just numbers, so that would be a little trickier. And so would the verbal one in this case. All right, so for this section, on your document, you're not going to be able to type right in these lines. You'll actually type your answers on the next page here. So as we answer these, we'll just write our answers here. So here, we notice that we're comparing two ratios. Remember, that is a proportion, okay, when we say that two ratios are equivalent. So number 5 here would be C, and on your document, you would just type C here for number 5, okay? Number 6 says 25 cats to 12 dogs. So here, it's a ratio because these don't have units. So I can take away rate and unit rate. Those have to do with units, and it's one of these two types of ratios. Remember, part-to-part ratio compares two parts of a larger group. Part to whole compares part of a group to the entire group. So here you can see cats and dogs are part of the larger group of animals. So this would be a part-to-part ratio, or B. Okay, so on my paper here, I would type B. Okay, here 75 pages per hour. So I see that there are units, pages, and hours. And I also notice that my second one is per 1 hour. You can put in that invisible 1, right? It says per hour, that's per 1 hour. Remember, a rate that has a denominator of 1 or is per 1 is called the unit rate. So this one would be D. I'll type D here by 7. Here I have 20 boys out of 45 band students. So again, it's not a rate because there aren't units. It is a ratio, and it makes sense that it's a part to whole because the boys are part of the whole entirety of band students. So this one would be A. And then let's make sure we did it correct. Make sure the last one makes sense. 13 dozen for $53.68. Dozen and dollars are our units, so it's definitely a rate, and neither one of them is in, it has a 1 like we had on our unit rate, so that makes sense. This is a rate. Okay, so we're going to go ahead to our second page. We already typed in our answers here, so we're going to move on to the picture here. And it says write each ratio as a fraction in simplest form. Squares to triangles. So this is a part-to-part ratio. All I need to do is count the number of squares, 1, 2, 3. And that goes on the top because it was first. And then the second number is triangles, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. It can't be simplified any further, so that one's done. Now here is a part to whole ratio. We have the part, the triangles, 1, 2, 3, 4, to total shapes. Now you need to count all of them, including the triangles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all together. Okay, 4 sevenths can't be reduced any. All right, so here the following table shows different types of animals at a sanctuary. Find the ratio of cows to total animals. So remember, cows would go first, and it tells us right there 5. Okay, that goes on top. And then total animals, we need to add all these together. So we'd have 5, 90, nope, let's see, 3, 4. Did I mess up? No. Oh, I didn't line up my things. Let's do that again. 5, 10, and 35. I tried to use what was there and I didn't line up my place values. That number wasn't going to make sense. All right, so 3, 4, 5, 50. That makes more sense. So 5 out of 50 here. So 5 cows to 50 total animals. And then we want to see if we can reduce. Let's see if we can divide both of these by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 50 divided by 5 is 10. So our total would be 1/10. All right, so now we're going to complete this table. Noticing here that this is the only one that is already complete, the entire relationship. So we're going to use this to make a proportion to find the missing value. So let's take these two. So I have 1 over x, which I don't know, equals 5 over 40. Remember, you want to keep the same types on the top and the same types on the bottom. So the money here and the number of items purchased here. And then remember, we can just cross multiply. 5 times x is 5x, and 1 times 40 is 40. Remember, you can draw your little dividers, circle your variable, and remember to get rid of this, you need to do the inverse operation. So I'm going to divide by 5. So that means x equals 40 divided by 5, which is 8. Okay, so the money spent for 1 is $8. Now because this has a 1 here, that's our unit rate. And we can use that to help us fill in the others instead of having to do a proportion every time, which you could, but unit rate might be easier. So if 1 cost $8, then 10 costs 10 times 8, or $80. Okay, similarly for these two, we have the total. We want to know how many were purchased. Your total was $56. How many $8 items did you buy? 56 divided by 8 is 7. So you could buy 7 of them for $8. Okay, here your total was 160. If you divide that by 8, you get 20 items. Okay, so you can use the unit rate to find the other ones. If you prefer to use proportions, you could set any of these equal to each other. They all should be equivalent. It's the same relationship. They're all the same ratio. They're just in different forms. So you could absolutely set proportions with any of them equal to find the missing items. All right, so here the table shows the amount of money Ken earned babysitting. Graph the ordered pairs, number of days, and amount earned. So these are your ordered pairs, and then describe the pattern in the graph. You can draw over the graph and take a picture, or make it on your own paper and take a picture there. So here, notice on the x-axis, we have number of days. So that means this is our x values. And on the y-axis, amount earned. So this is our y values. So our first ordered pair is 0, 0, and that goes right here at the origin. Our second ordered pair, the x value is 1, and the y value is 7. Or you could think of it as number of days is 1, amount earned is 7. That's going to go right there. The next one is 5, 35. So number of days is 5, amount earned is 35. It goes right there. And here we have 749. Number of days is 7, amount earned is 49. So if you do that, when you connect the dots, you notice that the pattern is linear. So it says describe the pattern on the graph. So it is a linear pattern. Okay, and that makes sense. Just like we were talking about here, these are all equivalent ratios. They're all equal to each other. This relationship keeps going up in the same way. So even as all these ratios change, they're still working together in that linear pattern. All right, so our next page says, find the following unit rates. Show all your mathematical thinking below. So notice they're asking for unit rates. So we need a denominator of 1 for all of these answers. Okay, so it says $250 for 5 gifts. If we want the unit rate, we want to know how much one gift cost, right? So we're going to put the money on top, 250, and divide it by 5 gifts to find out how much one is. So when we do 250 divided by 5, that gives us $50 per gift. Okay, so that would be our unit rate there. Here, 2,050 miles in 4 days. Again, we want to know how many in 1 day. So if we say 2,050 miles divided by 4 days, that would tell us 512.5 miles per day. Okay, here it says in a survey, 6 out of 20 people prefer cookies to cupcakes. Using a proportion, there's a clue, how to solve it. Predict how many people out of 120 would prefer cookies to cupcakes. So noticing cookies to cupcakes is in the same order, so we can compare these equally. So it says 6 out of 20 people have that preference, and we want to know how many out of 120 would have that preference. So again, the smaller number is going on top in this case because we're saying 6 out of 20. How many out of 120? You want to keep that relationship the same. So remember, when we set up a proportion, that allows us to cross multiply. So I'm going to multiply these two and set it equal to those two being multiplied together. So 20 times x is 20x. We'll set that equal to 6 times 120, which is 720. Okay, then we put in our dividers. Here's our x. To get rid of the 20, remember those are multiplied, we need to do the opposite and divide. So now 1x, or x equals 720 divided by 20 is 36. So our answer is 36 people out of 120 would prefer cookies to cupcakes. All right, so this says you can buy 5 notebooks for $17.50 at Staples, or 8 notebooks for $26 at Office Depot. Which is the better deal? So because we're comparing different amounts of notebooks, it's harder to tell. But if we found the unit rate, we could tell which price is better per notebook. So let's do that. So for Staples, we're going to do $17.50 divided by 5 notebooks. For Office Depot, we're going to do $26 divided by 8 notebooks. Okay, so let's see what we get. $17.50 divided by 5 is $3.50 per notebook. And Office Depot, when we do 26 divided by 8, we get $3.25 per notebook. So the better deal is cheaper, right? So this one is going to be the better deal, Office Depot. Okay, last one here. A recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar for every 5 cups of flour. So that sounds like a rate to me. 2 cups sugar for every 5 cups flour. At this rate, how many cups of sugar will be needed for 15 cups of flour? So we can use a proportion here. How many cups of sugar, notice I'm putting it on the top because that's where the sugar was here, for 15 cups of flour, again on the bottom because the flour was here. And then we can just cross multiply to solve. So don't worry about your units, just cross multiply. 5 times x is 5x. And we're setting that equal to the other side. 2 times 15 is 30. Set up your divider, circle your variable. We can get rid of the 5 by dividing. That's 1x or x, and 30 divided by 5 is 6. So then put it back in. What were we trying to find? Cups of sugar, so it is 6 cups of sugar for the 15 cups of flour. All right, so hopefully that helps you feel a little more ready for your test. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you soon.